Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hey, hello everybody. Today I'm interviewing David Bell, a top producer realtor with Kentucky Select Properties in Louisville, Kentucky. And by the way, he's also a board member of the Woosley Foundation and is active in numerous local charities. Welcome, David.
Thank you.
Before we jump in, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you became a realtor?
Well, I've been an agent for 25 years. Prior to that, I still practiced law. I'm a graduate of the University of Louisville Law School in 1978. And I practiced law for about 12 years, but mostly did trust and estate work. But I always loved real estate, so I finally decided in 1990 to go into that full time.
Okay.
I love houses. So.
Yeah. And on that note, what would you say separates you from the others? Because there's quite a lot of realtors out there, right? So what's your magic?
I don't really have any magic. I always tell my clients if I had a magic wand, I would wave it for them. But I tend to be very blunt, and people know that if I tell them something, it's usually true, and that I have their best interest at heart. So I try to put the client first, in their interest in front of mine. So I wish there were magic, but there isn't.
Well, I guess people will appreciate that kind of honesty, right?
Well, sometimes they do. I can remember I held one of my listings open on a Sunday, and it was a 2.5-story center hall colonial, which is a fairly typical Louisville house. But it had a full basement, the main 2 floors, and then even the 3rd floor was finished. So, and my clients had long moved out. So this woman goes through my open house, and she goes through the basement, 1st and 2nd floor, even goes to the finished 3rd floor. And then she comes down into the kitchen, and she looks at me, and she goes, "Have these people moved out?" And I thought, gosh, here my bluntness is going to get me in trouble. And so I literally said, "No, actually, they've gone to the grocery store, but they always take all their stuff with them." Because I thought,
that's funny.
Use a little bit of common sense. So, but oddly enough, she didn't buy the house or call me to show her anything else. But I just couldn't believe when she asked me that.
That's funny. Well, you've been a lawyer for almost 12 years, you said, and then you go on to the real estate, become a realtor. When did you and how did you discover you could do this job so well?
Well, when my ex-wife and I bought our first house 3 years after we got married, I saw another house less than 2 years later, and I thought, oh gosh, I bet I could really do something with that and make some money on it. So, of course, my ex-wife said she wasn't going to move, and so I persuaded her to go look at it, and we bought it, and then a year later sold it for about a 40% profit.
Nice.
So, and then we bought our 3rd house, and in that one, I called Susan one afternoon and asked her how her day was going, and she said, fine, and I said, well, guess what I did today? And she said, well, you better not have bought a new house because I'm not moving. And I go, oh, well, I saw the neighbor across the street when I was out walking our dog, and he was getting his mail and newspaper. And so I said, oh, if you ever think about selling this house, I would love to look at it. And he goes, we were just talking about that at breakfast. Would you like to see it? So my dog and I ran through it. And the bottom line was, I said, okay, we'll take it. And so, Susan was just furious. But, of course, when I redid the house, then she loved it. And I said, well, we can just move across the street in wheelbarrows. She didn't find that very funny either. But we did really, really well on our first 3 or 4 houses. So by that point, I'd convinced myself that I was a real estate genius and that I was lost in the practice of law. So I'd helped Susan start a business, which ended up being very successful. So I said, do you have enough faith in me to let me quit my job and go into real estate full time? And she said, sure. And so it worked out pretty well. The first year in real estate, I actually exceeded my salary at the trust company. So but I like it. I love houses.
Good. Well, you must like people too, because this is that kind of job, right? So, speaking
Yeah,
of,
I honestly try to put myself in their shoes and go, what's the best house for you? If you really want it, how can we get it to work out? But I try to put their interest above mine.
speaking of the clients, what about some of the questions that they ask you?
It just depends on whether they're first-time buyers or whether they're fairly sophisticated buyers who have, had bought numerous houses. With first-time buyers, you want to be very careful. You want to make sure that they're pre-qualified, that they've talked to one or two mortgage people and really know that they can buy a house, that they have some savings or down payment. So you have to be very careful with them because it's going to be the biggest expenditure they've ever made, probably buying their first house. So you kind of walk on eggshells with them, and you might get more involved in their financing, whereas a lot of my other clients pay cash or they've already lined up who they're going to use for a mortgage. But all clients are very different, so you have to treat them all very differently.
Well, one thing we see nowadays is that everybody thinks they can do pretty much everything themselves just by watching a few YouTube videos and figuring out how to do pretty much anything. So, and the realtor he's not any different, right?
Yeah, that is very true. The nice thing about that is you used to spend all day Saturday and Sunday. You would get in the car at 9 a.m. with a family, and then you'd drive around all day and you'd look at 20 or 30 houses. Now, especially the young people, they'll call and they'll already know which ones they want to look at because they've found them on the internet and they've looked at the pictures and they've driven through the neighborhood. So to that extent, all this information is very, very helpful. But it can also give the buyers kind of a false sense of really not needing a professional to try to guide them through the process. So I think that's one thing that I can bring to the table is some knowledge of the neighborhood and what's going to be happening in the neighborhood and what the sales trends have been. And so I think there's still a very strong role that real estate agents can play. Another thing that I think a lot of buyers will work with an agent simply because it doesn't cost them anything. They're not putting out money to work with the agent. So 90% of buyers, I believe, are actually working with a real estate agent. So you still have a good shot of making a decent living and helping people.
That's a very good point. To wrap up, do you have one piece of advice for our listeners to be successful in purchasing or selling a home?
Well, for first-time buyers, my advice is, get pre-qualified and be prepared to act on something. Don't just be out kicking tires. Because I don't know how it is in the rest of the country. I thought real estate has slowed down in other parts of the country, but in Louisville, it's very hot at the moment. And so just be prepared to act. A lot of times I was dealing with a house a couple of days ago, and there were 4 offers on it, and all of them were over the asking price. So that can scare a lot of first-time buyers. If they're asking $400,000 for the house, why would I pay $425,000? And I go, well, just in this market, things are selling very quickly, especially things in good condition. Most buyers seem to want something they can move directly into, whereas when my ex-wife and I were buying houses, I would want to find houses that I thought were on great streets, but they needed some work because I'd rather put my own stamp on a house. But most buyers, at least in this area, want something in move-in condition with nice kitchen and baths, and I don't blame them. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't have the time or the energy to waste overseeing a renovation project, which is always very stressful.
And what about for selling a home?
Selling a home, I think every seller thinks their house is unique, even if they're in a neighborhood of tract houses, that all look the same, but they all think theirs is special. So even though some things now in Louisville are going over the asking price, a lot of them are not. So sellers need to be realistic. They should have their agent or several agents come in and look at the house before they put it on the market and ask their suggestions. And once again, there's no reason they shouldn't do that. They're not paying for the service. But agents know what buyers are looking for. So if you're interviewing an agent and the agent says you need to take down that wallpaper in the entry hall, the likelihood is you do need to take down the wallpaper in the entry hall. So they should just be realistic about price and condition, because especially now, condition is really driving the things that are selling quickly.
So in a nutshell, they need to trust their realtor.
They do. I mean, I do this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I always try to answer my phone if somebody calls me. If they email me, I try to respond very quickly. So, and I don't get paid anything unless I sell something. So my commitment to them is to do what's going to be best for them to get their property sold, even if they don't use me as their agent. Once again, I'm very, very blunt. So a lot of times the sellers don't want to hear what I have to say, but they're free to disregard it.
Well, this leads me to the last question. I mean, we talked about having to trust your realtor, but how do you find the right realtor if you're a seller?
Generally speaking, word of mouth. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends. You'll notice if you go into a restaurant and you're just sitting down and you're not deliberately eavesdropping on other conversations throughout the restaurant, but I bet you about half of the people are talking about real estate. They'll go, oh, we just went to see this house, and oh, we're thinking of selling, because people love real estate and they talk about it all the time. So they should be able to have a pool of friends that they can talk to, or neighbors. You know, go talk to the neighbor whose house just sold and say, were you pleased with your real estate agent? Would you recommend that I talk to him or her? Because people love to talk about it, and people love to complain, or they like to brag about their agents. So, and then interview, and most of the time, sellers are going to interview 2 or 3 agents, probably from different brokerages. And you get a sense. What you just need to do is have a sense of trust with the person that you choose, because none of us have magic wands. I've even turned down listings before because I thought I'd either kill myself or these clients before the sale ever went through. So just see if you think that you can develop rapport and trust with the person that you're talking to.
Great advice. Well, David, thank you so much for being here today and sharing some of your stories with us. Now, how can our listeners learn more or get in touch with you?
Well, they can certainly email me. I'm with Kentucky Select Properties in Louisville. My email address is dbell@kyselectproperties.com. And then also we have a very good website, which is kyselectproperties.com. And you can pull up my biography on there, and you can actually use it to look at about any listing in the Louisville area that you'd like to see, not just Kentucky Select listings. And I'm happy to give my cell phone if you think that's appropriate.
Yeah, it is appropriate.
Okay, my cell phone is 502-644-2355. I'm not a morning person, so don't expect me to answer the phone or be chipper at 7 a.m.
And obviously, we're asking people to be respectful. I mean, that goes without saying. So once again, David, thank you very much for taking the time to share your knowledge with our audience. This was a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Happy to do it. Thanks for the call.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.